Hello and welcome to another ARC review. And today we are going for the second book in the Rainfallen Trilogy. Now the first one I've already done a video on, and that is linked up there if you want to watch it. It is spoiler free, and it is this one. Now this review is not of this one, so we'll put that over there. Can sit there for now. This ARC review is the second one. This one. I have to hold it at an angle because the light doesn't like it. But this is the second book in the Rainfallen Trilogy, Secret of the Thistle. And I got this as an ARC review, but due to me coughing my guts up, I am so late posting this video that it came out before me. So I actually have the physical one instead. So this can go right there, next to the other one. Now, as I said, this is an ARC review. This is the second book in the Rainfallen Trilogy. There will be spoilers, but it is at the end, and that's only because I have so many questions. And there will be a spoiler card thrown up on the video. You will be warned. So as I said, this is an ARC review. I am not sponsored. I am not paid. This is just my honest review of a book that I read. Now, because it is an ARC review, I will be leaving some things out. Although the book is already out by now, it came out on the 20th of November, and the link to buying it is in the title down below. Now, because it is an ARC review, I'm just going to outline some of the story in this one. If you want to know more about the first one, with absolutely spoiler free, and have a look at my ARC review of the first one. Now, this series incorporates some of the modern day technology lost to the ages. It incorporates Arthurian legend and the old kingdoms of England, such as Mercia, Northumbria, Wessex. I think there were a few other ones I can't remember. And they are restyled as the Sceptre of Wessex, the Bright Crown of Northumbria, the Empire of the Thistle, which is Scotland, and the Unholy Kingdom of Mercia. So I'm going to go straight into the outline. There will be spoilers in this outline for the first book, Salt in the Wound. And if you don't want spoilers, if you're about to read the first one, don't watch this video. Just go read it and then come back to me. I really don't mind. So in this one, we pick up with Elaine in the town of Edin in the Empire of the Thistle, which is, for all intents and purposes, it's Edinburgh. And this is dated months after the events of Salt in the Wound. And she's up there because she's trying to find a way to protect their home village of Wickerton, which was the goal in the first one, before everything got all screwed up. And in achieving this goal, and achieving what was Galahad's dream, she hopes that she will be able to make up for her betrayal of him at the ending of the last one. And all of this idea depends on whiskey. Magic whiskey. The whiskey that Galahad drank that made his eyes change colour and made his body able to heal itself. And of course, where is whiskey brewed but way up north in the cold regions of the Empire of the Thistle. And Elaine is convinced that this whiskey is the only way that she can, 1, save the town, and 2, in doing so, have Galahad forgive her. And forgive herself. But Elaine is on her own, and she is asking a lot of questions, and the wrong people are starting to listen to them. People who want to keep the secret of the Thistle to themselves and silence her. Which culminates in Elaine being jumped in an alleyway and barely escaping. And although she knows the questions she needs to ask, after all that she's done, can she bring herself to ask for help from the one person that she knows will be able to help her? Because of her actions, what if he doesn't come? And even worse, what if he does? And that's the question that we leave Elaine with, at least for this overview. As I said, I won't be going through the whole story. These are just the introductory chapters. So then we switch points of view and we switch to Faye, Betty, Errol and Bill. And we find them all dressed up in finery, which Faye keeps bitching about. But that's Faye, she's not one for dressing up. And they are going to a very fine sort of upper class meal where an announcement is made that the unholy King of Mercia is raising taxes to an extortionate level, all to fund his imaginary war with the Bright Crown of Northumbria. And this means that there will be more soldiers on the streets, more soldiers about, more weapons, more spears, shoving people around, and less food. So people will starve. And the people making these announcements know it. But because they are the rich and powerful, who cares if a few peasants can't get a bit of bread, hey? Which, of course, pisses our little band off no end. So when the group finally arrives back at the Green Man, which is the inn that everybody was staying at through the last book and Faye was working at, because of these new taxes coming in, cuts to staff have to be made because the guy who owns it can't afford to have everybody there. And Faye makes the decision that she's really not needed anymore in that inn. She is needed at her village of Wickerton because, I mean, if the inn can't really pay, then the little village has absolutely no hope whatsoever. And with winter coming, her family and all the other families will need her even more because there'll be less money about, less food about, and Faye can work. And because Betty loves her, Betty goes with her. Bill stays put in the Kingdom of Mercia. He is quite well off. If you remember in the last one, his father put up a ransom for him to be found, and he was off gallivanting, searching the woods for mythical monsters, which didn't end up being the monster that they thought it was, if I remember rightly. But he opts to stay behind, but he enlists Errol to do some folk tale digging for him, which is hardly mentioned, but there's got to be something about that. He's got to be looking for something. But my questions will be at the end. And finally, we switch to Galahad's point of view, and he has been staying with Catherine for the past few months, licking his wounds, flower arranging, and not really talking to anybody after the events of the previous book, with the ultimate betrayal by Elaine. Now, Galahad and Catherine are lovers, but it is more of a friends with benefits kind of thing, at least on his part. As much as he is living in denial at the moment, his heart really only belongs to one person. And all is plodding along rather well in Galahad's world, if a tad dull, when a blood-stained letter from Elaine arrives, pleading with him for help. And he is surprised that she is still on the mission that Galahad, in his misery and depression, and oh woe is me, has more or less given up on. His life work just gone up in smoke. And Galahad wrestles with himself because he can't help but go to her, even though he despises the very air she breathes. And me think the guy doth protest a little much. And all too soon, Galahad finds himself on the road to the Empire of the Thistle. And he begins to feel the familiar, if forgotten at the minute, feelings of uncovering secrets and journeying on a quest to a destination. Secrets that are just waiting to be uncovered, waiting for him to uncover them. But Galahad will find that some secrets are weighted with the danger of knowledge, and some waters are best left undisturbed. Now for our story outline, that is all I am giving you. If you want to read more of it, pick it up and read it. Now people say that you should not judge a book by its cover, and that is true. In people, however, in books, you definitely judge it by its cover. I judge books by their cover all the time, because the cover is what catches your eye at the beginning. But one thing these covers absolutely convey is the atmosphere of each book. This one is bright and hopeful, and this one is dark and ethereal. Unfortunately, I am such an unprofessional that I do not know who does the cover art for these, but they nail it every single time. I would say hats off to them, but my hair is a complete mess under this, so the hat is staying exactly where it is. Now, I was a bit apprehensive about starting this book because second books, especially in a trilogy, usually fall into the camp of being nothing but filler. without much direction, and its only goal is to set up the events for the third and final book. So second books can be a bit boring in this aspect, and I was apprehensive about starting it because I had really, really loved the first one, and I didn't want my expectations to be so high that, try as it might, this one wouldn't reach it, because it was the second book in a trilogy and therefore a filler. But oh, I was wrong, and I am so glad I was. I ended up reading this one in an afternoon. I think it took me around 6 or 7 hours just completely reading through the whole thing. I was off sick, so I had absolutely nothing to do apart from read, which is the goal of every reader everywhere. And I literally couldn't put it down. I tried. I'd put it down to try and do something else, try to sort of potter around a bit, and I always found myself picking it back up again, saying, I'll just read a little more. It really won't take me that long. I'll just read one chapter. The denial in me was great. It was a lot faster paced than the first one, which is expected when the reader already knows the characters, already knows the world, and is kind of up to date on the lore and events of what is happening in this world. The world building was expanded for this, which you would want with it being a second book, but it was expanded without being repetitive, so it didn't go over things that you would already know having read the first one. It opened it up into more of the country. You got to see more of the countryside, the wildness, the untamed north, and with more of the political climate at the time being more at the forefront in some of these chapters, it made for incredibly intriguing reading, because from some points of view you'd get the political and all the things happening, and on the other you would be in the wilds of Scotland, just untamed, full of creatures, and of course, rain. Now you might ask, with monsters and mythical creatures being such a big part of the first one, isn't there any in this if there's a lot of political dealings? And yes, there is. One of them in particular up in the Empire of the Thistle that Galahad and Elaine and a few others had to face, had me, while I was reading sort of them leading up to getting there and the sort of description of the area, had me thinking, is that what I think it is? Is that going to be what I think it is? It turned out not to be, but I'm not convinced yet. But that will be in my questions at the end. And I don't know whether it was because I read this book all in one sitting, or whether I was just so emotionally invested in this book and these characters, but the ending was gut-wrenching to say the least. I nearly cried, and it sets up the third book beautifully. So skillfully written, so skillfully done. But how dare you make me feel emotions, you bad author, you. Should be ashamed of yourself. And the author's writing style continues to be absolutely magical at weaving old legends and folk tales into this narrative that is more modern and fierce. And it gives the readers little tidbits of, you know, things that you like. You have a Leonardo DiCaprio moment. Now, if you haven't gathered already, I loved this book. And to say I'm excited for the third one would be one hell of an understatement. This book for me gets the full 5-star treatment because I literally could not get enough of it. And my only sorry is that this video has taken so long to come out. For this, 5 stars just doesn't seem enough. While reading this, I had so many theories, so many things that were sort of jumping out and thinking, is that what I think it is? So we have reached the part of the video that will contain spoilers. This is your spoiler alarm, if you will. The title on the screen says spoilers. My voice is saying spoilers. Click off this video, go read the book, and then come back. And these are questions that only the author knows at the minute because the third book isn't out yet. And I'm not sure when it will be, but it is coming. And these are my questions, and I made a note. I had so many questions that I made a note of them while I was reading. Some of them were answered further in the book as I got along, and some of them weren't. Now, as I might have alluded to earlier in this video, there was a scene where they were all at the lake and something was happening in the lake, and I was 100% convinced for the whole of those chapters leading up to that, because it's kind of Arthurian legend, the legends of King Arthur. I was determined that that was going to be the lady in the lake, or there was going to be a female in that lake with a sword.
Listen, strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government.
There wasn't, and I was quite pleased that it took a whole different turn. But I was supremely convinced that that was going to happen, which was quite funny when it didn't, because I was like, oh, I'm not thinking as much, I'm thinking way too deep. But I kept continuing to think too deep. Now, there's a character that pops up in this called Cade Blackcap, and there's a short story called Blackcap in this sort of series which I didn't know existed before this one. And I think that is the character from those books. And if it is, that's a great tie into the whole sort of world building. And one thing that really blew my mind as to why the hell didn't I pick it up earlier, I can't remember if it was in the first book or not. I can't remember whether it was sort of mentioned. I don't think it was. And if it was, I must have forgotten it completely. Because in this book, you get Faye's full name. And when they said it, I was like, you know, you should have picked up on these things earlier. But her real name is Morgan Faye Weaver, which for those who know the King Arthur legend, that is Morgan Le Fay, or Morgana. And when I read that, I was like, oh, yes, finally, yes, I see that. And how the hell I didn't pick it up sooner just makes for great writing, to be honest. I'm so immersed in the book that I can't think of anything else. Now for my questions, because I have questions and I do not expect them answered. I just like putting theories out there. And my questions are like, why did the long-haired priest have a keeper's sword? And I am determined that this long priest character is going to be kind of a Merlin type character. Absolutely determined. Why did he hide it kingdoms away from the Empire of the Thistle where it was made, all the way down in a cathedral basement, kingdoms away in Mercia where Galahad would eventually find it? Was it put there because Galahad was supposed to find it? Or was it put there because somebody else was supposed to find it and they got there first? Did the long-haired priest give the keepers up there the knowledge of how to make these swords and the cloaks that could disintegrate rain whites on contact? Because they must have got it from somewhere, and it doesn't seem like it would pop out the ground like daisies. And if it was a remembered technology, then why are they the only ones that would remember it? Or was this long-haired priest the head of the keepers? And are the keepers sort of a round table kind of thing? That's only just occurred to me if you didn't think it out. Now, there was one particular scene in this book that shouted itself off the page, at least for me. And it is nothing to do with what's happening with Galahad and Elaine up in the Kingdom of the Thistle. It's what's happening in Mercia. And it was a throwaway comment by Bill to Faye and Errol while Faye's recovering. And it was just a throwaway comment, and I have latched onto it for some reason, because it's in a scene where they're discussing the King of Mercia and all the sort of things that are being done and things that are going on. And Bill says, as a throwaway, sort of a throwaway comment, that the unholy king's family were originally the stewards of the Kingdom of Mercia. They weren't the kings. And Bill's own family... I have to Google something. I'm back. No, it isn't. I had to Google whether Bill was short for something or was a nickname for a different name, but it's not. So anyway, So that the Unholy King's family were originally the stewards of the Kingdom of Mercia, and Bill's family were in line for the throne. And if it was still in the way that it should be, then it would be his cousin Lily who would be queen. And none of this political strife, people's starvation, none of these wars or anything would be happening. And that sort of stood out for me because it reminded me of Gondor in Lord of the Rings, where a steward has been running the city while the king is absent for years, because the king being Aragorn and is off gallivanting and doesn't want to take it up. And it's been going on for years. And so the steward is de facto king, but not really. So I'm wondering, that got all the questions firing, because of a certain piece of Arthurian legend. And that legend being, there are all these characters, all these players that have the same, either the same names or names that they've chosen, which can be more than a given name. It all ties back to Arthurian legend. So in the first one we had Lance, Guinevere and Percival, who all got killed. And we have Galahad. I can't remember if there was an Elaine in the legends, I really can't. But we have Galahad and he is our main character. We have this long-haired priest, which I am determined is Merlin, or a character of that type. And the one that hasn't been mentioned yet is Arthur. Or around that. Because my thinking, I'm going wildly off into conspiracy theory time here. Because if the Unholy King of Mercia is technically only a steward, which means that there is no king, where is the king? And why are the stewards running the show and the king is absent? Because all the other kingdoms have a king. You just don't know him. But that one does not. And if I remember rightly, Mercia is... Yeah, so Wessex is down at the bottom. And if I remember my sort of Old English geography right, Wessex was quite a valuable kingdom. It had a lot of money. Mercia was in the middle. Northumbria was Sheffield, Manchester upwards. And Scotland started where Scotland does. So my thinking is, if this kingdom of Mercia is slap bang in the middle, nobody knows technically where Camelot was. A lot of people lay claim to it, a lot of cities lay claim to it, whether it be in Wales or in Cornwall or anywhere at all. My theory is that if this king that is missing, that you don't know is a king because this guy has called himself king when he might actually technically be a steward, what if the king that is missing is Arthur? Or do we already have Arthur as like a middle name, like Fizz, that we don't know yet? I'm leaning more towards Bill, because now that I think about it, his dad was a bit of a dick, for want of a better word. And in the legends, at least the ones that I've read, Arthur's father, Uther, was a bit of a dick. So it's either going to be Bill, or they're going to find something that's to do with this. Or, to be quite honest, they might not find anything at all, and I am just theorying and extremely overthinking this. But for a series that incorporates so much of Arthurian legend, where's the guy? Because there was a prophecy, and not in the books. Not in these books. Not yet. But the country in which these books are set, not the kingdoms, but the country. It's not England, it's not Scotland, it's not Wales. It's called Albion. And Albion is the part of the prophecy of King Arthur. That prophecy being that when Albion's need is greatest, Arthur will rise again. And that's where all this theorying is coming from. Now, in saying all of this, I could be completely off the charts and get it all wrong. And really, that doesn't matter to me. I could be completely wrong. I could be completely right. I doubt it. But it shows what a damn good job the author, Ben, did with this series. And this is only the second book. And it's already got me like this. I don't know what I'm going to do when I've finished the third one. How I'm going to fill the void of all my questions. It's not like I don't have enough to read. But if you like this video, please leave me a comment down below. If you've read this book, leave me your theories down below. And if I have inspired you to go pick up the first one, which you shouldn't be noticing at this time in the video, the link I will put down below. And as always, if you like this video, like my ranting, like my theories, please comment that down below. And as always, keep reading.